Okie dokie, let's do this. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Meyer webinar. How's the transmission? Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see me? Hello, hello, hello. Excellent. Thank you for confirming. So, super excited about today, and that means that I want to go straight to business. Let's look at the household notes first, and then we can go straight to today's guest appearances. So I'm, as always, going to share my screen, and we'll start with the household notes first. So today is going to be all about UltraSound. Super excited about that. We have two guest lecturers and a co-host that I'm going to introduce in a while. But before doing so, let's look at the usual household notes first, because we like to use Zoom to conduct these webinars. And that means that in front of you, you're expected to have a window not unlike the one you see right now. If you would like to see who else is joining you today on the webinar, all you have to do is click on the participants button, in which case a window shows up on the right-hand side showing you your fellow attendees. We encourage you to ask questions also during the session, but in order to do so in an organized fashion, we'd like you to make use of the raise hand feature. Notice that in the bottom right corner, there's a button called raise hand, and whenever you click on that button, a blue hand icon pops up informing me that you're about to ask a question. In order to ask the question itself, we would very much like you to make use of the chat function. So whenever you click on the chat balloon icon, the right-hand window splits in half, showing you a dialog with a field at the bottom where you can enter your message. You can address everyone on the call, that is to say address the nation, or if you happen to see a friend, family member, or a fellow colleague, you can also address that person in private. That concludes the Zoom household notes. We're also simulcasting as we speak to the Meyer Sound user community on Facebook. Thank you for joining us as well. The Facebook group is counting over 8,950 members and rising, so thank you for joining us. Super, very awesome. And that means that I'm very honored to introduce today's venerable co-host, which is Bob McCarthy. Bob, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're doing well.
Yep.
Okay, so Bob and I will be moderating today's call, and we have two guest appearances today, starting with Josh Osmond, UltraSound's Director of Operations. Josh, are you with us?
I am, yep. How's it going?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I hope you and your loved ones are doing well as well.
Yes.
Excellent. And then we have Tom Lyon, another guest appearance today, which is who is UltraSound's senior audio system engineer. Are you with us, Tom?
Good morning and good evening to everyone out there.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for doing this. So today we have a lot to cover, and that means that without further ado, I will go straight to the first slide. We had a very pleasant meeting the other day, and so we have a good idea of what it is that we want to talk about today, starting with the founders of UltraSound. So take it away. Anyone that would like to comment on these iconic figures?
Yeah, so basically, so Don Pearson and Howard Danchuk founded UltraSound in 1978, and just a little backstory there, and sort of how they came about in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area music scene, which is where UltraSound was formed. And Tommy, jump in here and correct me if you hear anything that's a bit off, but the story I recall is hearing was that Don and Howard had early on developed a monitor system that was, they were using it with Jefferson Starship at the time. Mm-hmm. And, word started to spread that these guys could actually hear themselves while they're playing, because they had this really nice monitor system that had been built. And so through that, the Grateful Dead caught wind of it, and that was sort of the doorway from for ultrasound and Don and Howard into the Grateful Dead. And that monitor system is what eventually led into become the Ultra Series monitor with Meyer Sound, the UM1 and the USM1, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, talking about that.
No,
And Bob, you also probably remember
Yes.
quite a bit of this.
Yes, I was there at the first show with the Ultra Monitor with Cantner and the Starship Remnants and the Grateful Dead and Carlos Santana. It was some kind of benefit concert, and everybody went, whoa. Wiz tells the story of it too. We were all there. Everybody heard this thing and went, oh boy.
Yeah, and it's this. I mean, there are monitors that are still, obviously the MGF has replaced it, but there's still a number of them, that are out working and doing shows. So that's quite a tenure that design has developed and been able to hold up over the years.
Excellent. Well, Don Pearson is, of course, very dear to all of us. Meyer Sound ended up naming a theater after him, which is our Pearson Theater, which was opened in 2004 as part of celebrating Meyer Sound's 25th anniversary. I wasn't around at the time. That is to say, I wasn't working for the company at the time, but maybe Bob can comment on the Pearson Theater. And are you in a position to do so, Bob?
Oh, sure. I can briefly. I mean, Don was, such a long time presence in everything that the Meyer Sound Company did. He was one of the, our really important persons that we ran everything by, any new product, and of course he would drive new products himself. But he's just the kind of person, just an absolute fanatic for getting the best quality, down to taking out every capacitor in the system, so it would go down to DC and he could run square waves. The guy was really driven and a really wonderful person, as a personality, wonderful. And Howard, of course, one of the most gentle, wonderful people that you'll ever met. So we loved working with him, and we were so sad when Don passed. It was a real shock to all of us. And we were building that theater at the time, and once that the thought came up to build that theater and name it after Don, everybody went, oh yeah, that's absolutely the right thing.
So it's my understanding that the company today is under different management, or that's to say the same management, but the recent management.
Yeah, so Derek Featherstone is the current owner of the company, but Derek is in no way new management. He joined on with UltraSound, I believe, in around 1987. Tommy, is that right? 87?
86, 87.
86, 87.
We'll probably get a text message about this.
Yeah. So he's been with UltraSound, through the decades, and so in no way new to the company. But we went through, as a lot of people know, a merger with Pro Media. For a while, and so we operated as
1998 until 2016, 2017.
Yeah, and then Derek essentially bought the company back from Pro Media to stand alone as UltraSound on its own again, and operate under the original sort of principles that UltraSound was founded upon.
Yeah, unfortunately, Derek could not join us today, but we hope to bring him back and talk at great length about Dead & Co. and much more. So surely
it's a 3-part series on its own, the Grateful Dead story.
Right. So very much looking forward to that. So UltraSound provides a lot of services through the years, extensive list. Anything you guys want to add to what we see on the screen at this point, or elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, we've been, obviously a lot of people know us mostly for our work with the Grateful Dead or Dave Matthews Band, but we've been servicing, many tours through the years and had a strong presence here in the Bay Area through all this time. So we work extensively with, a lot of the venues here in the area. A lot of the different festivals that happen around the Bay Area, and then as well as just servicing install needs, whether they're in California or not. We send equipment out, for instance, right now to New Hampshire, where we have a small system doing some of the drive-in concert, craze that's been going around now in the current circumstances. But a lot of our clients, a lot of the core ones, have really been, with us through 2 or 3 decades. And Grateful Dead, Dave Matthews, Primus also, especially, that was one of Derek's clients early on that he was mixing, while and before he came to UltraSound. And so Primus is another one of those clients that spanned through multiple decades with us. And so we really do pride ourselves in bringing clients on and maintaining that relationship and being able to keep a relationship and build a relationship with them over time, so that we really can go, above and beyond and help them with not only getting them the equipment they need, but really the expertise that they're going to want when it comes to designing their show or any, issues or challenges they may be facing with the given tour.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm gonna point something out. I want to draw everyone's attention to something which I've, as I was making this keynote, notice these subwoofers close to the deck. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout the entire presentation. So this is just me giving you the heads up of something that you will see time and again, and I'm sure I'll ask some questions about that during the course of today's webinars. So as we discussed,
I just want to note that for a Dead show, that's a low vertical stack. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, I mean, get the pictures of Red Rocks, and they go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Red Rocks. That'll be when you talk to Derek, he could show all those pictures.
Yeah. 650s on end, 16 tall.
Exactly.
Excellent. So as we talked about this project, it's been suggested that we're going to cover two projects which are dear to your organization, which is Outside Lands, and the second half will look at the Dave Matthews Band. So those are today's. That's what we focus on today, and starting with Outside Lands. So takes place in Golden Gate Park. Take it away.
Yeah, so Outside Lands is a festival here in San Francisco that's been happening since 2008, and it's put on by Another Planet in conjunction with Superfly and Star Hill, and it's really become one of the, at least in the United States, one of the premier festivals. I don't know specific numbers of other festivals, but I would say, Coachella, Bonnaroo, and Outside Lands, sort of the 3 biggest of the United States festivals. And the unique thing with Outside Lands, as you could see by this map, is that it is smack dab in the middle of a very densely populated city, where a lot of times these other really big, large festivals are out kind of in more rural areas. And so that provides its own set of challenges for us, because as you see where the arrow is pointed, that's the polo fields there, and that's the main stage area of Outside Lands. And then there's 3 other large stages and a handful of smaller stages throughout that area of the park. And the average medium household or house around that area is probably somewhere between $2 and $4 million, and to rent is probably anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment. Although maybe not right this moment with everything going on, but so as a result, you've got a lot of neighbors that we have to be considerate of with doing our design for the festival. And although there's everyone's used to the festival, everyone knows the festival is there, and a large number of locals go to the festival, there's still a very large population that is at home doing their normal work week and wanting to have their weekend at home and not be disturbed by a couple 100,000 people coming in to see some music. And so here you can see some of the lineups to represent. It's always pretty much, from the first year has been marquee names that have come in. And also one thing that Another Planet has always done really well is just make it very diverse. So, you've got, and I think festivals in general nowadays have become pretty diverse. So you got anything from your legacy act, like Elton John or Paul Simon, up to hip hop and EDM, or more sort of acoustic music. And so it really has to be, a system that is able to be, very flexible and handle any of the demands that may come up. And so when we started the early version, 2008, we started with a Milo system. So obviously the Leo family was not a product yet. So we did Milo mains and sides. You can see here smaller hangs for the sides, and the coverage area that we're trying to cover is really pretty broad. The length of the field of the coverage area is around 230 meters from the downstage edge to the back of the area that we're trying to cover. And then the width of the field, and you can see here, this is also the first year. So we used MSL 10s for the delay towers the very first year. That was their only appearance at Outside Lands. So the width of the field, the field itself is probably around 100 meters wide, maybe a little bit wider, but the overall width of coverage is about 200 meters. So we've got a lot of surface area that's outside of the audience listening area that still needs to be covered. And that is all VIP and high money ticket buyers. So we really got to make sure that we're doing a good job there, which for most of the early years, it was all, again, the Milo system. You see a column of subs there. Those are M3Ds. Again, only appearance was the first year for those. And after that, we moved to the 700s doing the column. So really for the first decade, it was a Milo rig with 700s. And then the delay towers were some Milo for the first set and mica on the second set of delays. And you can see, again, that column of subs. This time they're off the deck a little bit. And what we would do, really, we will do whatever the headliner wants us to do. So if a headliner would come in and didn't want those sub columns, coupling with the stage, we would bring them up off the floor for them and get them where they would like them, and just leave them there for that given day, and just try and be as flexible as we can for whoever that headliner is for that day. And obviously, I don't know, in terms of, if we want to just talk real quick about that column and why we do it. Obviously with the taller column like that, it's allowing us to get a longer throw into the field. And we do augment it with some pit subs as well that do a sub arc down there. But if we were doing just a sub arc across the entire stage, we would really have to drive those pretty hard in order to get the throw out to the farther parts of the polo field. So that's really the sort of theory behind doing that column. And here you can see now that has moved into, I believe this is 2012 probably, which was the first year we did Leo, and that was like Metallica. And so we slowly kind of transitioned into the Leo family system. Obviously, Leo came out first, so we were able to switch the mains out to be a Leo system, and some 1100 subs, and then we kept the sides here. We're still mica, and the delays were still Milo and mica at this point. So we hadn't, Lyon had not yet come out yet, and Leopard obviously, and so we sort of is all from the first year, up through the first decade. It was mostly minor changes we were doing to the system design. Here and there, we would swap out newer boxes as they became available, starting with the mains and the main subs, the sub columns there.
This is still Leah over mica?
That's Leo over mica, yeah. You can
Right.
see the bottom three, the underhang there is still mica on this main array. And we'd always do the gradient subwoofer array when we would do that column. and I believe it was 2015 probably that we ended up going to Lyon underhang, and it looks like this one is now up to the Leo sides, I believe. And here you could kind of see this sub array on the ground was done specifically this year for Metallica, because Big Mick wanted a left right, plus they will build the snake pit overnight after this day or the day prior. But typically what we'll do is arc across the front there, and sort of one of those things where, again, depending on the headliner, we're flexible and we're ready to kind of do different configurations as needed, because someone might have a center thrust that goes out 20 feet into the audience, or Metallica comes in with the snake pit. So really what's on the ground there really needs to be pretty flexible and be able to move each day as required. The other thing you can see in this picture along the wing there on the house left side is the sort of introduction of leopard. And so what we would do if we had the full sub arc across the front, they'd be 2 high subs, and we would put 2 leopard on top of each 2 high cart of subs, and 5 across to do the center pit arc. And then on the wings there where you see noted, we do 3 leopard across spaced out, just a single high, just to do front coverage for the really wide areas of that stage. And you can't really see the audience here, but it's about 15 feet to the barricade line from the downstage edge. So it really gives some room for those to breathe and cover really well up front there. So here you can see the delay tower configuration that happened pretty much every year from 2009 to 2018. So what we did, these delay towers, as you can see, they're fairly close together. So we put the delay towers down the center of the field through the first decade, and the main reason for that was to play nice and give good sight lines in the field. And so by putting them down the center, we essentially fell in line with the front of house mixed structure, which is the biggest sightline issue with the spot towers behind it. So we just kind of created a consistent sightline issue throughout the field where they weren't in the way by being spread out. Here you can see the 2 high leopard on top of the subs down there in the pit, which really work well as for front fill coverage. And again, the audience is 15 feet from the stage. So they do, by the time you're back there, you are getting into the underhang quite a bit, but because of the width, it really, really helps to have those leopard up front there. As you can see in this, as time went on, we swapped out. This is now Lyon at the first delay, and it was no longer Milo at that point. And the second delay eventually became leopard. The other thing you'll notice with these delay towers is the trim height is pretty low and pretty limited there. I think the most we were able to get was about 25 feet to the top of the grid. So that was a little bit limiting in what we were trying to do. So as a result, what we did in the earlier years, we were really using the main system was doing quite a bit of coverage and long throw work. And then the delays just kind of filled in there. And what occurred over time was as the festival grew more popular and went on longer and longer, the noise issues throughout the neighborhood became a much larger talking point. And Another Planet has always been, very big on working with the city. It's, their relationship with the city and what they're doing for the city is a really important part of doing this festival. And here you can see the site map. And essentially the festival itself, and I can't recall the exact numbers, but I think each year it's probably around $4 or $5 million that the festival gives back to the San Francisco parks. And so making sure that everyone in the city is as happy as they could be while this festival goes on is a pretty important factor for everyone involved. So 2019, we went back to the drawing board. We got with Bob over at Meyer, and we worked together. And Bob did a case study on some of the noise issues were going on, and we came up with a really cool redesign of the system. And so the general theory behind this is that we essentially were taking the old system, and we took some, virtual sim measurements of what the old system was doing at front of house, and we wanted to match that throughout the entire field. And so in order to do that, and more importantly, reduce the bleed outside of the audience coverage area. So you can see here, this was what the original design did in terms of just general aim of where the speakers were going from 2018 and prior. And so those center delays, as you can see, are pointed out a little bit, and then the side hangs also pointed out towards the neighborhood. So really, we took everything and aimed it so it was now facing the same direction as the main arrays, and the only thing facing outward were the sides. The other thing we did was we took the trim height of everything, and we trimmed everything out at a higher, much higher than it was previously done, and we aimed it down a bit more. Now, obviously, the area we ran into a bit of a challenge was with those delays, because as you saw in some of the earlier photos, that those first delay towers, we were limited to 26 feet of trim height, which wouldn't really have allowed us to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish. So we were able to work with production. They redesigned the towers that were being used, brought in bigger, beefier towers. And then the next really important thing that we did that you could see here is we essentially made the first set of delays the exact same main system as the main arrays. So the Lyon over Lyon was an exact duplicate at the first set of delay towers from the main array. And what that allowed us to do, which was really cool, the cool concept that Bob came up with, was just we were able to have the volume and the tonality and the punch and power at front of house that we wanted, but that main array cut off soon after the mix position and died down. And then that first set of delays 1, 2, and 3, and we did you can't see from this, but we did a left, center, and a right tower to spread out across the field. And so that allowed then that next 100 meters or so to be essentially the exact same system that the mixer is listening to, that the front of house mixer is listening to at front of house. And so aside from having that nice smooth coverage now, the other thing it would do, if we ran into issues where maybe a mixer is getting a bit loud at front of house and starting to run into our SPL limit, we could then turn the rest of the system down and have a lot more control over that field to optimize the amount of sound bleed that's coming out of the polo field. And so it really helped quite a bit in just overall control, aside from again aiming everything correctly and doing a little bit more of a dispersed system throughout the field to cover a little more smoothly. It just gave us more overall control over things when they did get a little bit out of hand and things got a little hairy when it came to volume. So that made a really big difference. And then the second set of delays, the delays 4 and 5, ended up being a Lyon over leopard system. So six Lyon over 6 leopard. And I should also note that each of those delay positions had 1100s at them as well to help extend the low end through the field. So we weren't relying on that main subarray to do quite as much work, which, as you noticed in the new design, was actually flown behind the main arrays now instead of a big, large column stacked on the stage. And it was reduced in size also. So here you can see some map 3D predictions here. On the left-hand side, you've got the 2018 system at 125 hertz. And you can see the blue rectangle there. That represents essentially the polo field itself. And then you look to the right at the 2019 system, and you could see, looking at that darker red area, how much more it stays in more of that rectangular shape that we're looking for in that field. And as it goes up to 250 there, same thing. You'll just notice that the 2019 system essentially really does a much better job of being more directional and staying within the field that we're trying to accomplish there. And go ahead, Bob.
Of thinking inside the box instead of outside the box. It's thinking inside the box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and being able to do this with Map 3D made a really big difference in having that tool, and being able to see it there. And as you can see again, as it goes up, even here now, this is to 4K, as you really start to see the difference there. So yeah, it was really a fun redesign to kind of work with Bob and work with the festival to come up with what we could do and how we could do it, and really just try and ultimately make it better for everyone, better for the neighborhood, make a better system for the artists and the bands coming into play and the engineers. And so I think we, really accomplished what we were setting out to do, which was make everyone happy.
So that's yeah, speaks for itself. So we have some extra pictures of the actual system itself to go with your explanation.
Cool. Yeah, so here you can see the smaller subarray flowing behind the mains there, versus being a column stacked on the ground.
I love the mechanical steering.
Stage. Yeah. Yeah. That's more of the mains, and there you see the 3 delay towers spread out the left, center, and right. And I should also mention this whole system we did. We run it all over AVB and all on Galaxies, which makes everything really pretty smooth and slick and way easier. There's a copper backup run for everything into all the processors. But on a side note from the system itself, one of the really cool things that we were able to do with the Galaxies and being on AVB is at front of house we had 3 Galaxies that sending out our stems everywhere, and with it being on the AVB loop, we essentially could have 8 different front of house consoles patched into this directly into the processors, either AES or analog, and all sending a left-right sub and front fill feed without ever having to unplug anyone from a processor, without having to go through any sort of mix switch of any sort. So every band is able to plug directly in, and without AVB, that's just not really possible. So that's a really cool kind of byproduct of the direction people are going with networked audio.
Excellent.
Here's the, Sorry. No, I was just going to say this is the second set of delays, number 4 and 5 in the far field, and those are 6 Lyon over 6 Leopard there. It's not really, those aren't doing a lot of work. It's really the back of the field. There's a bunch of picnic tables, and but throughout the day at this festival, I think daily attendance is around 80,000, not counting all the comps. So throughout the day of this festival, the entire field is just packed with people, even if they're not densely populated up to the front of the stage. They're out there eating, drinking, hanging out, just sitting in the grass. And so that's the far field delay there.
Right.
And by keeping the sound good quality to the back, you can relieve people from being crowded and feel that urgency to push up to the front.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a really much more pleasurable experience.
Yep, yeah. And just again with having this all be a Leo family system now, the response from anywhere in the field is very consistent to again what the front of house mixer is hearing, which is a really important thing, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think that concludes Outside Lands, and that means that the next chapter in today's webinar will be Dave Matthews Band. And there was one photo which I just couldn't I couldn't resist the temptation, because look at this. It's like,
Yeah, I was
it was back when Tommy needed a permission slip from his parents to go on tour.
Yeah. this is my second year in the tour. So I started off as the stage left PA tech and monitor assist, and then in 2002 or three, I went out to the front of house technician system tech positions.
Agreed. So as we talked about this yesterday, it was like, oh, it's such a pity that we cannot show those MSL 10s, and then it was like, wait a minute, I know a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy that has a CD-ROM, and the result is on the screen. So I thought this might be a good point, especially because this is your second year to start over here. So can you tell us what we're seeing here, Tom?
Yeah, this is where I started my career. Dave Matthews Band became a client of UltraSound about 1996, if I'm not mistaken. And it's almost a direct heritage, again, from the Grateful Dead. Dave Matthews Band was an opening act for the Grateful Dead a couple times in 1995 in Las Vegas, and the management of Dave Matthews Band has always kind of patterned its career after the Grateful Dead, where they emphasize quality, the audience participation, and how good the audience show is. They encouraged taping of the shows and encouraged the trading of tapes. And so it was kind of a marriage made the right way. And also, in an unfortunate way, they were able to sort of inherit the Grateful Dead system after Jerry died and take it. So they had this really high end for the time. This is, like mid 90s, like MSL 10s and MSL 3s. That was their touring rig. So yeah, this is back when we were doing a bunch of stadiums. So you'll see 6 MSL 10s with 14 MSL 3s and 2 rows. And then, yeah, our typical line array of the subs, the 650 R2s.
The recurring theme.
Yeah. Now, I must say the common denominator for this design and this why we were using it for so long was actually Derek. Derek Featherstone came up with this, and he was basically the system designer up until we moved into more modern stuff in 2004, 2005 or so. But we kept on every year sort of improving things. I mean, this whole system, despite how much analog stuff you're seeing, was actually all driven digitally, but just this is before Galileos. So we actually were driving it with SoundWebs in a custom GUI, and every like everything was multi-zone. We were doing time alignment, multi-band, parametric EQ on everything. So which also kind of follows along with the philosophy that comes from Don Pearson. Donnie was always about forward thinking and using analysis and your ears as tools, like as many tools as possible to push the envelope on things. So I pinched many fingers and rolled over many toes with these big things. Yeah, that's the delay system of MSL 10s as well, with MSL 2s underneath. A lot of Crest amplifiers everywhere. So yeah. Oh yeah.
Just say those MSL 10s are still sitting in our warehouse too.
Yeah. Someone wants a bit of heritage, let us know.
Yep.
We're getting
Spammed in the
bombs here.
Yep.
So how do we get rid of this person?
I'm working at it. Apologies for the inconvenience.
Tom, you can carry on.
You can carry on.
Well, let's see. What else can we talk about? Yeah, actually, a big shout out to Jeff Child, who was able to at 1 o'clock his time this morning dig out in his storage of photographs. He was the other PA tech when I started on this tour, and he was able to come up with all these old photos. So.
I think one thing real quick, Tommy, not to interrupt you, but I just noticed looking at this photo, that's kind of cool. Just again, a attention to detail thing. If you've noticed at the bottom of each of these MSL10 delays, there's a little, it looks like an MSL2 probably downfill there, which is kind of a nice, little detail of really, again, looking to try and make sure coverage is as smooth as possible everywhere.
That to me was always one of the amazing things about MSL10s was how little downfill they needed. They had a really sweet underside. So even though, I mean, this is a real case of Papa Bear, no Mama Bear, and goes right to Baby Bear. But MSL10s did really, really well under those circumstances.
Excellent. So I will bring up the next slide because then we do we do a couple of years and we go to New York.
Yeah. So at this point we moved into Milo family. So we're into Milo mains. 700. We started off with M3D subs in 2005 and switched to 2006 to HP 700s. This was one of our own festivals, Dave Matthews Band festivals in Randall's Island. We did this, we would every couple years we host a couple of our own festivals and have other bands play on different stages. Haven't done it in a couple of years, but this was a pretty common occurrence. And so we'd have to augment our touring system with more delays and stuff, either from our sister companies or from our own inventory. You notice it's very similar kind of deployment as the initial Outside Lands festival deployments too. And as we acquired more bits and pieces like Milo 120s on the bottom of arrays or transitions into I think a couple years later, I went into mica for a little bit wider, a little bit better sounding kind of downfill box. We kept on incorporating these upgrades from year to year.
Okay. You also sent some photos of some setups with subwoofers in Dallas, so maybe you would like to talk about those a little bit, because I wouldn't classify this as exotic, but it sure caught my attention.
Obviously, the band, Dave Matthews Band, is a very acoustically driven band. We're like the main guy has got a hollow body acoustic, and he is 8 foot from the downstage edge, and there's 20 some odd inputs of drums and things. So this was my attempt to steer as much energy as I could away from the stage. One thing we started doing was instead of flying the mains from the downstage edge, we'd actually fork them into the pit of the amphitheater and fly them from the pit. So another 4 foot or so downstage of the downstage edge. And then this is a kind of a crazy end fire / gradient array where you see the upstage sub hang is 1100s in gradient, and then the sub array in the middle is 6 700s, and the 700s were actually run, as I recall, with the 1100 preset on them. So just it worked actually too well. So the band started noticing that they weren't getting that energy from when they were really going for it and trying to make this big emotional push, that they weren't getting the energy feedback from the PA. So we actually had to put some sort of sidefill subs that were controlled by the monitor guy and us, just to kind of give the band a little bit back. But that way, it made it a lot easier to keep. This is 2 years later, which ended up being kind of our finalized design for quite a while. So a gradient array sort of on the center point of with a mains and a side hang, but the mains are spun quite a ways on stage to try to cover as close as I could to the stage without spilling onto the stage itself.
Excellent.
Of course, it would be typical. The stereo panning goes right, left, right, left.
Right. So this was a special request by Bob. Something about an anecdote. Correct
Yes,
me if
I
I'm
have a little
wrong.
story to tell. This guy, Tim Reynolds, who is playing obviously with Dave Matthews, they've done all this work together. He's his steady guitar player. And I just want you to know that this guy is one of the key people responsible for me going into professional sound. Because I was in a band with my cousin who was the keyboardist, and then they upgraded the band and replaced me with this guy, Tim Reynolds. And I stayed around because I wanted to, you know, still get that gig, and just started to do the sound. So I started to mix the band, and that literally was my first time of being a mix engineer and setting up sound systems. So thank you, Tim Reynolds. I'm still looking to get your job, but I'm stuck with this one for now.
Now,
He's an incredible player and such a super humble guy, really nice guy.
Yeah, I really never, it was amazing. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
as we were talking about this, it was felt that the amount of equipment might have been a little bit overkill for these two guys.
Yes, what you're seeing is 24 Lyon per hand.
You could have easily got another four per side on there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just more, I mean, we had it in the truck.
Hey, Ed Sheeran has more, and he's just one guy.
Yeah, all right.
Excellent. So we're getting closer to the present. This is Dave Matthews 2018, but Tom, you've been involved in the Gorge multiple years, so you send us some pictures. So like Outside Lands, you know, I've compiled those in, and we can see the evolution of this system.
Yeah, you can see this is the old original stage that was there too. They actually ended up having to scrap this one because it just got too weather worn, and eventually had the flying grid derated on it. So yeah, so this is the somewhat asymmetrical side hang array where the stage right side, house left, is missile 4s, and the stage left, house right, is mica.
Yow.
And because the amphitheater itself is asymmetrical, it goes very, very wide on the house right side. Yeah, and actually, one thing I neglected to say is this is all the designs from when I got started up to when I took over mixing were a complete collaboration between myself, Derek, and the front of house engineer, Jeff Thomas, who had been with the band since almost the beginning, who was a brilliant, he could easily be a system designer, you know, system engineer too. The two of us were hand in hand, like I was helping him mix, he was helping me EQ. It was a collaboration. And it was definitely a testing. I wouldn't be where I would be without him constantly double checking my work.
So this is 2011.
Mm-hmm. Similar with a new stage. A little bit more. I think it's 2 by the on the stage on the house left side. It's 2 wide MSL4s this time.
Right.
Same sort of line array subs. Similar, yeah.
Yep.
Then we finally start getting into the more of a modern deployment with the Leo and the 11 the sub array going behind the main array.
Correct.
Yeah. By the way, no pit subs with the DMB usually.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't put the pit sub so close to those acoustic guitars.
Exactly. And, we found like it almost kind of made it more uniform from front to back. Like, you're not, when you're getting into those really loud sections, we're very dynamic. We can be anywhere from 93 to 102, and I don't want to blow out those people that are in the front, those, the fans that are listening to every word. And, I remember distinctly going to one of my first concerts when I was very young, Rush in Rochester, New York, and they had a bunch of subs in the like across the front of the pit, and they were just obnoxiously loud. It was like took away from enjoying the show.
I think another thing too, Tommy, just to interject real quick, just about the, again, concept of flying subs, especially with a band like Dave that's, doing lots of amphitheaters. If you're putting all your subs in the pit there, you're often going to, a lot of amphitheaters have at a certain point a cement wall wrapping around the audience area or the seats. And just in general, you'll end up with really inconsistent coverage. So if you have the option, definitely you should always look at flying subs. I prefer to fly them anytime, but definitely amphitheaters, it really does make a big difference.
Yeah, the only time that we actually deploy subs on the ground is when we're in arenas and the trim height is so high up that I have to kind of fill in underneath the coverage of the flown subs.
Right. It's like you overshot the beginning of the audience, and now you need a fill.
Yeah.
It's a nice position to be in when you need sub fills.
So this is 2018, all Leo.
Mm-hmm. And then we went to.
Well, we're almost there.
Almost there. Yeah.
We're almost there.
I was still on Old Costos.
This is interesting picture.
My upside down leopards.
Right. So some impressions of the concert in 2018.
it was just a really good year. That was also, you see there's an organist on stage right, and he really brought the level of the playing up, and just really made the show elevate a lot more. It made our jobs easier. Like if you're getting better stuff, better information into your mixing desk, you can just like ride the wave,
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there we go. So this was 2018. This was the year where it was all Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2019 you decided to go for all Lyon. And that's something that I would like to pick your brain on. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit about the decision-making process.
Well, we always touring with the Leo. It was really good. I mean, we always had power for days. It threw for miles. But when we did that acoustic tour with Lyon, we noticed that it was also just as really, really powerful, and almost led itself to be more flexible because it's lighter. We were able to basically carry more of them, and it also made it more flexible as to if I flew them on the sides or if I augmented my mains. And then with the TPL update, which came along, which we were one of the first to do that, if I'm not mistaken, we were able to basically get the same power out of it and have all those factors come together. It throws plenty fine. I don't run out of headroom on it. It just works out in everyone's favor.
Right.
There's a bunch of typical amphitheaters that Dave Matthews plays at every year that with Leo, I'd have to make concessions due to the weight. I didn't have to do anywhere near the same concessions with hanging a Lyon rig.
Interesting. Cool. So this was the last year, 2019.
Yeah.
the one that we just discussed, with a photo of a person that has matured in 18 years, starting in
Oh.
2001 Charlottesville.
Yeah. Less hair on top, more gray on the beard.
Yeah, well, I can concern to that. I can relate. I can relate to that. So that's awesome. It also basically brings us to the end of a super interesting webinar, and that means that I would like to thank Tom Lyon for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Same goes for Josh. Much appreciated.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having us.
And are you guys amenable to having some questions?
Yeah, we'll see how many
Absolutely.
come through with the spam.
Yeah. You have to filter a little bit if you look at the chat. I try to monitor it to the best of my abilities, but let's give it a try. Anyone that has any questions for today's attendees, for today's guest appearances, guest lecturers, please make use of the chat and post your question. And then I'm sure that we can answer them collectively.
Ooh. Maybe not.
So somebody's wondering if Lyon is named after Tom.
Of course it is. And the Galileo 616 was named after me. It was just misspelled.
So Roscoe is wondering, how do you deal with weather?
I'll have a good story about that. We were playing at an outdoor football stadium in Hershey Park, and it's a stage much like this, but the PA wings are not covered with a roof. And the weather was supposed to be great, and sure enough, right after sound check and before doors, a flash thunderstorm came through, and I didn't have rain hoods on my mica. But in the direction of the weather came in from one direction and blew out like 75% of the amps on that side.
Oh.
Before I was able to power them down. So I ended up having to rehang an MSL4 rig in its place, and luckily enough, it was general admission, so people were basically able to move around to where they could hear it. But we typically put, like, I usually tour with rain hoods on all my speakers because I'm mostly outdoors. So.
Okay.
And the other question about if the rigging's done by an outside firm, the rigging for the Dave Matthews has lately been a Reed rigging out of Chicago. Okay.
So we have a question regarding outside land. So I'm gonna go back to the relevant slide. Erica Rust is wondering about the alignment procedure for the relay towers, how to go about that. So I thought maybe this is a good picture to talk about that.
Well, Tom and I were both there, and Josh as well. It basically was just a keep it moving forward. And if you look at the 90-meter mark on this drawing, you're going to see that's where the first relay tower lands, and that would be the junction point where you would that's where we delayed the mains to, and then the subs for that section were delayed to be synchronous to what was coming from the mains, which were already synchronized. So that's how that worked, because of course your main subs are right there in line with the main Lions, main Leos and Lions. So then that process is repeated at about the 165-meter mark as well.
Yeah, and of course we're putting the gradient presets into those subs and those delay towers too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing too, just real quick with sub alignment that we did, it's not just with the delay towers, but with the arc subs in the pit, was we kept it, I believe it was 55 degrees of width, just to keep, so that we are arcing them, but we're not arcing them as wide as possible. We're really trying to keep it within those polo fields there with what we're doing with the arc. So instead of going 75, 80 degrees wide, even though it's a fairly wide field, we're keeping it about 55 degrees. And so it's really being, working efficiently in that area. And those are also cardioid in the pit, so that everything is working to also do some cancellation behind the stage and in the rear of the venue.
Thank you. Back to Dave Matthews. Christopher Dean is wondering whether the tour is now using Galaxy and whether you're taking your AVB feed from the S6L.
Can't do that yet. The S6L isn't Milan yet. This year wasn't going to be a Galaxy year for me, but we'll see next year.
So Roscoe is wondering, define kicking it about 35 degrees, please. I take it that goes back to the previous slide where we talked about the alignment of the relay towers.
I think he's talking about the delay.
Yeah, so about the 55 degrees maybe. So that's basically just with the delay arc, the more you're delaying your stacks of subs as they work towards the outer edge of your array, the wider the coverage pattern is going to be from those.
Right.
And there's a number of tools you could use to calculate that that work really well. And we just basically instead of just punching in numbers and listening to where it covered as wide as possible, we really took the time to do a lot of predictions and look at the impact of those subs specifically in the neighborhood areas. And so that's where we came up with that 55 degree number, because that was sort of the best balance between covering the field the way we wanted to cover it and keeping it from leaking out into the neighborhood and other areas a bit more.
Understood. Excellent. Well, to our viewers, if you have any questions for today's guest lectures, please enter them in the chat. If not, then we're gonna do the finishing household notes.
Well, I think you have an important note there from Ryan Lewis. He wants to know who's the good-looking bald guy next to you at front of house.
That would be Ryan.
I have a feeling.
Excellent. Okay. So like I said, thank you very much, UltraSound. Thank you very much, Tom and Josh, for joining us. Super cool. Super appreciated. So let's go to the finishing household notes. Tom Lyon, guys, UltraSound senior audio system engineer, and Josh Osmond, UltraSound director of operations. And of course, I would also like to thank my my co-host, the venerable Bob McCarthy. Thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the next session. And that means that a recording of today's webinar, as always, can be found within the next couple of hours or so on our Thinking Sound YouTube channel. This is where you can find the recording of today's webinar. As for upcoming webinars, we're very much working on that. Suffice it to say that this Monday, due to popular demand, we're going to do a live rerun of the downtilt translation webinar. And then regarding next week, Wednesday and Friday, it will inform you in the foreseeable future. So please, if you want to know more about those webinars, consider joining the Meyer Sound user community group on Facebook. Sign up to the newsletter. There are various ways that you can keep yourself informed about future webinars. And that means that without further ado, please stay safe, please stay healthy, and best to your loved ones. Have a very nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks.